Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and today on the show, we have the wonderful Will Foxley, the wonderful George Kalutis, and the wonderful Christy Harkin. Welcome to the show, everyone, and let's dive straight into it. Huge news, both really good and really bad. So, Will, I'm going to hand it off to you.
That was a great intro. Yeah, totally. The news today has been good for some and pretty terrible for most everyone else. Actually, pretty terrible for everyone across the board. I'm referring to inflation there, which we saw ticked up to 6.2% year on year for the month of October, which is the highest in 20 years. Some other estimates that are non-governmental studies on inflation say that it's even up to 30 years, which is pretty impressive in terms of inflation. Of course, that comes after this year where the Federal Reserve and others in Treasury have been talking about how this inflation is transitory in nature, meaning inflation is going to come and pass. Doesn't look like that's really happening at all. On the other side, we also have Bitcoin breaking all-time high again at $69,000 per coin. Never been that high, which is pretty fantastic. And Naomi, just to get back to you, I'm getting pretty excited about Bitcoin now.
We're almost at 69K, and our eyes are watching it very, very closely. I think it did break it on some exchanges. So it's like figure out which exchanges you're going to average the amount from. But I mean, this we've been railing against. Sorry, go ahead, Will.
Go ahead. No, I was interrupting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've been railing against inflation and fearfully looking at it for a long time, saying this is crazy. This is unprecedented amounts of money printing. This is incredibly experimental monetary policy. What are the effects going to be? And obviously, a lot of people in crypto are there because they think that the economy is going to go bust, that the US dollar is going to inflate away. They don't want to lose all their savings, and so they're looking for a hedge. This is echoed by JP Morgan's analysts, who have attributed the rally to the rise of inflation expectations and Bitcoin's appeal as a hedge against rising prices. We've heard the same rhetoric from people like Michael Saylor, who are all in on Bitcoin, basically turned MicroStrategy into a Bitcoin proxy stock. So it's exciting for the people who have been in crypto for a while and who have seen the promise of it, that if the government really screws up the money supply, if their monetary policy and all the elites and bureaucrats who are determining what happens to our savings, if they really screw up, then it's nice to have an option. And now it seems like they're really screwing up, and a lot of us have dived into this option. It makes me sad that there are so many people out there who have not been keeping up with this, who have not been preparing themselves, whether it's gold, which has also broken a 5-month high recently and is also considered an inflation hedge, or whether they're diving into new digital assets. Just finding ways to diversify your portfolio and not holding your money in cash is really important right now. But Christy, I'm going to throw to you for your take on all of this.
Well, talking about screwing up, let's just, as the tech editor here, I just want to give a shout out to, and I'd like everybody to take a moment to thank a dev, because Bitcoin itself has not screwed up. It has had no downtime over the years. It is developing, and none of this would be possible if it weren't for the strength of the underlying technology. And the fact that it has managed to undergo major soft fork upgrades over the years, some of them contentious. The community's rallied and managed to get changes done slowly, I know, but that's a feature, not a bug. I think really is a testament to the strength of the blockchain itself, and that is why it can be a reliable hedge. George?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. Bitcoin is just going to go TikTok another block, and it's amazing. It's great. But back to talking a little bit about inflation, and I don't like sounding like an alarmist, but this is terrifying, right? This is absolutely terrifying. And I think the Americans on the Hash are going to have some serious educating to do about sound money principles to our extended families around the turkey that may or may not be there this Thanksgiving, given supply chain is really choking itself out. Naomi, you make a really good point about people trying to put their money in assets. And it's sort of interesting to me how if I tell someone to put money into stocks to preserve wealth, they don't look at me like I'm a crazy person. But if I say to put it into gold or into Bitcoin as a way to preserve my wealth, it's as if you're a crazy lunatic. It's kind of an interesting conversation that's going to start coming out now that we see actual inflation. Like 6% inflation is a lot right? That's a lot of erosion. So now that we actually see this happening, it's a weird moment because I'm not a person that wants inflation to come. I don't want it to come like crazy. I don't want Bitcoin to go up because of it. But this is what's going to happen. So we need to prepare for that. So educating our friends, our families this Thanksgiving is going to be a big deal, Will. So.
No, totally. Definitely going to be a big deal. And yeah, I think just contextualizing what you're saying there with the stock market, 6% return is what a lot of people look for year over year for their own equity portfolio. And now we're getting 6% inflation over the year, which is just like, how do you make up for that gap there? You have to be gambling. And that's why we saw a lot of that over this past year, where a lot of people have been dropping money into Reddit stocks or have been dropping money into Shiba Inu. People are looking for ways of making money. And that's how this gambling alternative kind of pops up. Because there has been a lot of money flowing around, and it's looking for interest and it's looking for savings. And luckily, we have Bitcoin. And I always say that this is kind of like the sad way Bitcoin becomes adopted, is that there's such poor use of the government's power to print money that you are forced to an alternative quicker than you want to. The best way for Bitcoin to be adopted would be very slowly, where there's little adoption, and Bitcoin is adopted because it's a great technical use case. But here we're seeing it being adopted because of inflation. Amy, I'll give it to you though before we move to the next subject.
For sure. I mean, Bitcoin has so much promise. Just the promise of financial sovereignty is enough to get a lot of people onboarded. Just the idea that they can control their own money. But you're absolutely right that people don't take the plunge until something personally affects them, until it's your PayPal account that gets frozen, until it's your bank account where money is seized, until, it's your data that's stolen. You don't care about privacy, right? So all of these things, they're very abstract concepts, and most people just can't really relate to them. They're living their everyday lives. They've got too much to worry about on their plate. So they're just not considering these abstract concepts until it hits home. And as you said, the sad thing right now is it's really hitting home for everyone through all of this massive inflation. But let's change track and go to something a little more quirky. I'll phrase it. So Seoul has said that they will be the first major city government to enter the Metaverse. What does that even mean? So Seoul, South Korean capital, they are planning to make a bunch of public services and cultural events available in the Metaverse, meaning that if you want to maybe go to virtual city hall and visit historic sites, file civil complaints, you basically can put on some virtual reality goggles and do it through there. I don't know what the public services are like in Seoul. I know that in the United States, if they announce anything like this, it's like you kind of jumping from completely archaic to like futuristic. So it's mind-boggling to me that the Seoul city is considering this. In America, I would just love them to kind of get a handle on doing some of these things just digitally at all. Living in the 21st century, that'd be a great first step rather than have to line up at the DMV. So it's kind of interesting. I'm always less excited when the government is the one who's delving into these things, but interested what everyone else has to say. I'm going to throw to you, George.
Yeah, I always get skeptical when anyone brings up the metaverse, and I start always thinking about the hilariously obvious dystopian future state where we willingly inject ourselves into a fake consciousness, and then Keanu Reeves has to come save us, right? Like, it's so obvious it's in front of our face. The Matrix is happening in front of us. Now, again, I sound like an alarmist, but this, though, however, does not feel like this is in any way going to lead to that dystopian future, right? This feels like, exactly like you said, the digitization of a city. And again, I say that really skeptically because I don't think I've ever expected to say that myself. I think this represents a metaverse that I'm okay with. They're just trying to bring their courthouse services onto the internet. It feels like it's just like Zoom with more bells and whistles. It feels really harmless. Feels like one of those things that a few, boomers might be super excited about. Things a bit over the top. I don't really think it's that cool or innovative. We'll throw it to you before we go back to Naomi.
You don't want to pay a traffic ticket in the metaverse. Like, that's exactly what they're talking about here. And I think that is kind of cool. So you don the goggles, and then you can go to City Hall. You can go meet the mayor. You can go downtown. You do lots of different stuff in the metaverse, which is actually like a pretty interesting solution to like a lot of the problems you face in the city, especially in a big city like Seoul, where you don't have any interactions with like municipalities at all. You don't have any interactions with city government, and they're trying to get around that and still kind of keep that personal connection there. Like obviously paying online for a ticket is always going to be like a little simpler than like putting on goggles and walking in virtual reality to City Hall to pay something. But you kind of can keep that relationship, I guess, with the city that way, especially if people in city government are also using metaverse goggles. It sounds a little ridiculous, and it probably is going to not be adopted very widely, but it's fascinating they're thinking this way. Naomi, I'll give it back to you.
Just my immediate thought is like, first of all, it's cool. I love the metaverse. I love the fact that we're delving into this, three-dimensional digital realm, wearing goggles and meeting people in kind of a meet space-like area. But my question is, so they've put 3.9 billion won into this, which is $3.3 million. Obviously, that's paid for by taxpayers. Are the taxpayers happy that, the government is putting all of this money into developing a metaverse that they may or may not even understand what it is, right? There are probably a lot of other things that the government could put that money into, or heaven forbid, they could just not charge the citizens that amount of taxes, and they could perhaps keep some of their wealth in an era when there's massive inflation and everyone's losing so much money as it is. So like when you have big projects like this with the government, I find it hard to get excited, because it's just like, it's such a trade-off when you're choosing where to spend money. And I feel like some bureaucrats like, this would be cool, right? It'll make us edgy as a government. They're spending taxpayer money to do it. I don't know whether the people are going to be that thrilled with this if the trade-offs are put in front of them. But I'll hand it over to you, Christy.
Well, I mean, to take on your point there, I think there is an issue perhaps of accessibility. One of the things it says in the article is that they haven't decided what kinds of equipment you're going to need in order to access it. And when you're talking about the metaverse, you're not always talking about virtual reality. It can often be accessed sort of on your laptop. It's just that it's laid out there. It's not the meat space. It's a virtual world. So maybe that's not so bad. But on the other hand, I'm also kind of seeing this as just another way of waiting on hold with goggles on instead of like just picking up a phone. They're still making, you might not be going down to the DMV, or you might not be going down to City Hall, but you're probably still waiting on hold with whatever equipment is on your head. And it's already annoying to have to do that over the phone. So I'm just imagining, I don't even know how much more efficient it's actually going to be. Is it more quirky and, just gimmicky, or is it actually going to be a useful thing to do? Because like, as Will said, you can pay a parking ticket online. So yeah, that's
Christy,
my question.
It's ridiculous that you're framing something the government doing as in terms of, is this efficient? Is this useful? They're not thinking about that, but they definitely want cool things that might get them reelected. So maybe they're hitting it right on the mark there.
Yeah. Let's all put on goggles and throw up. That'll be popular.
I love it. And it's just going to be like, just a badly rendered, it's going to be like a bad version. It's not going to be like a high-end version that the private sector will come out with. It'll be like a badly rendered, elevator music type scenario. It's just going to make it worse. Honestly, I'm with you, Christy. You've converted me. It's not even cool. Let's wrap that up there and head to... Yeah, let's head to a break. And coming up after the break, we're going to be talking about what some are calling the trial of the century. Let's dig into what Craig Wright has said at the latest hearings coming up next.
So, Craig Wright. The trial is still going on in Miami. If you don't know who Craig Wright is, he's best known for his longstanding and widely disputed claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto, the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin. And he is currently being sued in a civil suit by the estate of Dave Kleiman, his former best friend and supposed business partner, who his estate claims that Craig owes the estate a whole bunch of Bitcoin based on past business dealings between him and Dave. It's all very complicated. And what we have had over the last few days is Craig Wright on the stand giving his version of events. And I'm definitely choosing the word version. So one of the things that came out of yesterday and the day before from his testimony is the idea that the Bitcoins in question are being conflated. 3 separate piles of Bitcoins are being conflated. And what he is saying is that there are 3 different groups. So there's 1 million Bitcoins that he mined alone as Satoshi, that Dave, his former business partner, independently mined approximately 1 million testnet Bitcoins. So not real Bitcoin. So the Bitcoins that his estate thinks they own are actually testnet Bitcoins. Now, a testnet is a sort of an alternate reality version, if you like, of the main net. So anything that happens on a testnet, it's just for practice. It's not real Bitcoins. You can't trade them and use them. There was some way back, some people did try trading testnet Bitcoins and that got scrapped. But no, testnet Bitcoins are not worth anything. And then he also says that he purchased 1.1 million Bitcoins for the Tulip Trust, which is a trust that even that is under some scrutiny as to whether that actually was a thing. So really, there are 3.1 million Bitcoins that are up for grabs, but not really. And yeah, it's really, really confusing. So that's what has come out of it. His testimony should wrap up today. Well, it may continue next week, but they're actually going to be putting everything on pause till Monday, holidays and various things happening. But there's one thing that I really want to point out here. The prosecution, or the plaintiff rather, hasn't called in an expert in blockchain forensic analysis yet. And I don't think that it doesn't look as if they're going to, judging by the witness list that's on record. So there hasn't really been anybody who has gone in and laid out the case for tracing the origin and movements of any of the coins in question, or to give any testimony on the possible ownership of the wallets that may or may not be holding these real or fake Bitcoins. So I don't understand that myself. Naomi, do you want to give it a crack?
I think this case is hilarious because I was wondering how Craig was going to backflip out of some recent findings that came out. So essentially, some of the addresses that he put forward, a bunch of them have been disputed. Like he put forward a bunch of addresses in like when you have to give your preliminary evidence for this case. And then some of them people actually signed a message using the private key attached to those addresses to say these are not owned by Craig Wright. But then some people also traced some of the funds to stolen Mt. Gox money. So some hacker. And then so basically it meant that if Craig owned this money, then he was a hacker. Now, keep in mind that the reason he was putting forward these addresses is because they're like early Bitcoins that were considered like the first few blocks. And he was saying, yeah, mined these because Satoshi mined blocks in the early days. Now he's backflipped and said that he's explained away this Russian hacked Bitcoin because he purchased those ones. Oh, and also that slew of emails and messages that we also provided in the preliminary evidence that all says that Kleiman and I put together that we had this joint mining venture. No. All of that was fraudulent. I have been hacked. My email is often hacked, and all of that was incorrect. Also, I have autism, and autism means that I can explain away any fraudulent statements I make, anything that's contradictory, if things just don't fit together. It's because of my autism and not because I'm a liar. So he has just done the most amazing mental gymnastics and backflips to get out of this. This is hilarious to watch. And even when he says that, how do you explain that you've been saying that Kleiman is credited with creating Bitcoin? Now he's like, well, he just meant a lot to me, and no one was ever going to remember this man. He means so much to me. Oh my God, it's so rude to them. Like, no one's ever going to remember you. You did nothing important. Like, what a slap in the face to the family of the deceased there. But I would not expect anything less from Craig Wright. But yeah, this whole thing, I mean, it makes me angry, and it's also incredibly amusing, right? But I'm going to throw to Will for your take on all this.
Angry and amusing is an emotion I feel whenever I hear about Craig Wright as well, because it is pretty hilarious. Also, if you're the reporter for CoinDesk on this story, pretty awesome. You get to stay in Miami for a few weeks, so that's pretty sick. Kind of looking at the case right now and where it stands, I'm totally with you, Naomi. It's like, how does he keep coming up with stuff? This testnet Bitcoin is not something I saw coming along the pipeline. I'll confess I've not been following this case as closely as other people, but just like pull out testnet Bitcoin and say that's what has been used. That's pretty hilarious. If you know anything about Bitcoin, just like testnet Bitcoin is just kind of a running joke, and it just makes no sense that was kind of brought up. It's also very easy to prove that that's probably not the case. So I don't understand. Like, it just keeps backpedaling into more lies. That's my 10,000 foot perspective on it. George, I'll give it to you though.
Before I move on to my topic, I just want to say shout out to Cheyenne, who's a CoinDesk reporter, who's doing a thankless job of reporting on this. And I will refrain from saying anything, but it's surprising to me that people think Satoshi would go buy Bitcoins on an exchange. Just saying. Anyway, so my story, I'm going to talk about the University of Cambridge, which is developing a blockchain-based market for trading carbon credits that will support reforestation projects to preserve biodiversity. So the university established a center for carbon credits where computer scientists and conservation scientists will work together on the project. In short, the center will look at how the purchase of carbon credits can be used to fund nature-based solutions preserving biodiversity. And the marketplace will be baked using the Tezos blockchain. And I mean baked because that's what they call mining on Tezos. There's probably a funny adjacency in there to hippie culture and conservatism. But my main takeaways here are, and it kind of goes to what I said yesterday about putting blockchain wrappers on things. One, it's really interesting to see the University of Cambridge lean in even more on blockchains, given their Center for Alternative Finance published one of these seminal pieces in the Bitcoin mining space about energy use. So that's pretty cool. But two, I still can't get over the fact that we're putting blockchain wrappers on bad ideas to make them sound like good ideas. Now, I love the idea of conservation and reforestation, but carbon credits are just throwing money at a problem and claiming that the money inflow will solve it, right? A carbon credit, and I'm going to read what the article said, carbon credit is just a permit that allows the holder to emit a certain amount of carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gas. And just because you paid for the right doesn't mean you offset the fact that you had that output. And at risk, again, of sounding like a cultist, I think it's very fiat to think like this, right? We have to create real solutions to these problems. You can't just throw money on it, and you certainly can't just put it on a blockchain. So I don't know if anyone has anything to jump onto there, but there's that. Naomi?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I agree with most of what you're saying. I would say that the underlying idea of carbon credits, I don't hate, because there is an idea that, some people, some industries, it's easier to internalize these external effects. And if they're able to do that, then they should get rewarded and that should be able to pass that on. Like the tokenization of that value, I don't think is a strange or bad concept. What's actually bad about the carbon credit system as it stands is that it's incredibly bureaucratic and corrupt process. So you're absolutely right. It's like, let's not even talk about how efficient it is. Let's just talk about like how bureaucratic and the corruption involved with all of this. So, when bureaucrats have taken this idea of protecting the environment and they've just made it this very shady process instead of actually looking at the things that could make a real difference, you've got to wonder how much they actually want to make that difference. If they actually wanted to make a big impact, deregulate the nuclear power industry. I mean, we're going to have fusion reactors within the next 10 years. That's going to be a reality. All of the research seems to be presenting in that way. That would completely eliminate carbon if that was their main concern, right? It is absolutely the way we should be going in society. So it's crazy to me that we're dealing with this very, very complex bureaucratic process instead of doing the things that might actually make a difference if this was a real concern of theirs. But I'll throw it to you, Christy, because I saw your hand go up.
Well, I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I also agree with pretty much everything George said, but I would also like to say that I agree with Daniel Kuhn, who wrote an excellent opinion piece this week entitled "Carbon Offsets Are a Distraction for Crypto," and that he said in it he suggests that rather than sort of wiping your hands and purchasing carbon offsets, that you invest some of that money into building renewables instead and creating your own infrastructure or contributing to an infrastructure that supports carbon neutral actual energy use, so that you're not just buying your way out of a problem. On the other hand, I also like the idea of putting that, I know it's sort of wrapping things in a blockchain and going, woohoo, it's awesome. But yeah, I like the idea of anything that may or may not, well, hopefully may, counter corruption in an industry that is rife with corruption. Will, did you have anything to add?
Just echoing both your guys' thoughts there. This just seems like a very press release kind of product they're putting out there. That sounds real nice, right? You have carbon credits on the blockchain to save the climate. Like, that is just perfect. Get some investment money in there, maybe get some students to sign up for the class. Boom, you have yourself a career. So I'm not a fan of these things at all. I'm really not a fan of carbon credits or any of the systems that are out there for this, especially for cryptocurrency. Naomi kind of laid out the argument really well, so I won't add anything else there. But gosh, there's some PR statements that are just rolled out there, and they're just hilarious.
It makes me so happy to have, this group of people. And it's not just the people on this show. It's, the people who watch this show. It's the crypto community who can see things like this and just kind of read through the bullshit and just all of these, flashy press statements that get thrown around. I really like this culture of criticism and just scrutiny, just looking at things. Don't trust, verify, right? I love that. So shout out to everyone who's looking at the world and being a bit more discerning. But that wraps up the show for today. Stick around though, because at 3 p.m. we have All About Bitcoin with Christine Lee. Tomorrow morning we start back up again at 9 with First Mover, and then you've got us at the Hash at 12 again, as you do every weekday. We love having you guys here. Love all the guys in the chat as well. Hello to all the regulars, seeing some people who are tuning in for every show. So that's really awesome to see. So stick around, and we'll see you guys same time tomorrow.